Basement Politics with Freddie Vasquez. Tonight, Latinos de Yonkers. Good evening. Good evening. Sorry, I'm coming on a little late. Had a little bit of technical difficulties, but I want to say thank you for joining me. Good evening. Freddie Vasquez here with Basement Politics Unfiltered. Tonight, Latinos de Yonkers. I want to discuss a little bit about the Hispanic community here in Yonkers and give a little bit of background. And I'm going to do a couple parts. It's going to be a series. I want to start a little bit with the history. Not too much, but a little bit of the background of Latinos here in Yonkers, in regards to Puerto Ricans, the Mexicans, Dominicans, and also talk about Hispanics in politics, different organizations here in Yonkers that serve the Hispanic community in particular, and influential members of the Hispanic community. So I'll be talking about them, a little bit about their background and what they've done here in the city of Yonkers in terms of benefiting and supporting the Hispanic community. But before I get into that, I did want to talk about the schools here, the Yonkers public schools, and not just the schools in Yonkers, but here in Westchester County. From what I hear, Mount Vernon, I believe, has been already sent home for the remainder of the year. From what I'm hearing also here in Yonkers, there have been some students that have been sent home as well for the remainder of the year. And there's a possibility that the kids will not return after the Christmas break. Again, I don't have any real information, specific information, but just things that are happening, putting two and two together. Also, I've done some reading of the school board minutes, which I think is very important. Parents, you should definitely go on the Yonkers website and read the school board meetings, minutes, I should say. You will find it to be very helpful, and also have information that I can show you and kind of see where things are headed within the Yonkers public schools. And some of the things that have been happening, contracts that have been awarded recently, for me, have been suggesting that they're looking to close school down, go remote, and do this until all the students and staff are fully vaccinated. As some of you may know, and hopefully most of you know, that there is a bill in the assembly now, Bill A8378, which will mandate vaccination for COVID-19 for all students attending a public or private school, whether you're in daycare centers or in pre-K or universal pre-K kindergarten. You will have to have your child vaccinated in order to attend. So, I'm guessing that they're going to pass this come January. I know Joe Biden's supposed to be making an announcement tomorrow, so look out for that. And that could be impacting how things go for the remainder of the school year come January 18th, I believe, is the day that they come back. So just want to put that out there for parents. Maybe you should prepare for that. Consider what you might do in the event that does happen. I know that was a struggle for many parents. It's often difficult, but even parents, we may all be locked down, the entire country. I'm hoping that doesn't happen. I'm totally wrong. But that's just something that, I'm kind of gathering from things that I'm seeing, things that I'm reading. So parents, just prepare in the event that does happen. I just want to get that out there. Now, going back to the topic of discussion, Latinos de Yonkers. And I was talking with a gentleman in here in Yonkers, well known, has done a lot in the community regarding the Hispanic community here in Yonkers. And we just began talking a little bit about the history. And I said, you know what, let me do a podcast on it. And then I started to get some information. I said maybe I have to do this in parts. So today's part one. I'll keep it short, be at 30 minutes mostly. But again, I'm going to discuss a little bit about the background of the Hispanic community here in Yonkers, where they've come from, of how long have they come from? A long way, I should say, from the 50s when Puerto Ricans first came here to 2021 now, the changes that have happened. And again, Hispanics make up almost 90,000 people here in the city of Yonkers. That's a lot. There are about 212,000 people here in the city. We're the third largest city in New York. So that's almost half of the people in Yonkers are Hispanic, of some Hispanic group, whether it be Puerto Ricans, Cubans, Dominicans, Mexicans, Colombians, Ecuadorians, and others. So I just want to go real quick, a quick history. Puerto Ricans, as I mentioned, and Cubans, some may know, make up the largest Latino group here in Yonkers. I say we because I'm Puerto Rican. We first originated, or I say originated, but we started to migrate to the New York area in the 50s. However, many other Hispanics have immigrated from such places as Colombia, Ecuador, Costa Rica, and the Dominican Republic. A wave of immigration from the Dominican Republic, as we have a large Dominican population as well, they're very prominent, occurred after the assassination of the dictator Rafael Leonidas Trujillo. I'm sorry if I don't say that correctly, and the civil war that followed. So the civil war occurred, and so many Dominicans came over to the United States. A lot of them settled here in New York City and in Yonkers. Fastest growing Latino group is the Mexican American population. And yes, they are. And I remember growing up in Yonkers, and all you saw primarily was Puerto Ricans. And then we started to see Dominicans coming slowly. And we've always kind of had this thing where we always made fun of each other, right? And we used to make fun of the way the Dominicans spoke and said some things. And then slowly but surely, they started to really dominate. And now, we don't talk as much as we used to. And I saw the same thing happen with the Mexican population. And in fact, the Mexican population started very small. In 1970, there were only 63 Mexican Americans here in Yonkers. 20 years later, there were 2,231. So it was a slow climb, but then it started to grow rapidly. By 2000, the census had Mexicans at 7,294, mostly coming from the Puebla area of Mexico. So shout out to the Puebla area of Mexico. By 2000, however, Puerto Ricans were at 18,097. So we've always pretty much been the largest group of Hispanics. However, that doesn't mean that we've been the most successful. And I have my theories on that why, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. Many Latinos, as we know, have faced discrimination, especially, and this is very important, especially in housing and employment. In the early days, and it still happens actually now, some families were put out in the street. And we've seen that happen here in Yonkers, right? We've seen that happen in the middle of wintertime during the holidays. How many times has the building department, for one reason or another, along with the, I don't want to blame the fire department, but, they call them also to assist, but it's the building department that shuts down a building in the middle of winter during the holidays, and it's primarily, if not all, Hispanic families. And it's happened often. And it's sad because what happens is they force them out right away. They can't gather all their stuff because they don't know where they're going to go and put this stuff. And they end up getting robbed because people now know that the apartments are empty. And it happens during the holidays. And who does anything about it? Remember that question. I want you to remember, if you're Latino, if you're Hispanic, and you're watching, I want you to remember that question. Who has done anything about it? Right? And we've seen that happen often. It's very sad. Anyway, moving on. Father Antonio Sagrista of St. Peter's Church was very instrumental in bringing the community representatives, and they founded the Spanish Community Progress Foundation. And that probably makes sense. I grew up a Catholic here in Yonkers, and I went to St. Peter's Church. I also went to St. Peter's School, and it was done in the mass was in Spanish, which I don't know what they were saying really. I hated it. I did. I'll be honest. I hated it. They were long, but I also went to St. Peter's School where my parents could afford it, and then at one point they couldn't afford it. Well, I should say my mom. My parents weren't together, uh, but that was up until second grade. But a lot of Hispanic children do attend St. Peter's. That is one of the Catholic schools or private or alternative schools that is usually dominated by Hispanic children, students. And, then you have others like Sacred Heart, primarily white, but St. Peter's have always been primarily Latino, blacks schools. So yes, I can understand why. The SCPF, the Spanish Community Progress Foundation, incorporated in 1970 and has become a vital link to direct social service aid for the Latino community. They provide referrals for housing, employment, welfare, help with immigration, court, school systems, etc. Now, I said welfare that way because, and this is why my theory, going back to what I was saying regarding Puerto Ricans being the largest Hispanic group here in the city of Yonkers. However, we are not necessarily the most successful. In fact, statistically, we are the most educated in terms of getting a college degree, but we are the poorest. We are down there in terms of economically, and my theory is because of welfare. Yeah, I'm gonna say that welfare. Now, welfare is not a bad thing. There are people who need it. I grew up on welfare. My family, my mother. I went to the store back when they had the brown dollars. I don't know if you guys remember that stuff. Green, I think the green fives or green tens, purple fives, I think. And till this day, and not to diss anyone, and not to put anybody business out there, but to this day, many people I knew who were on welfare then, when I was growing up, are still on the system. And what they've done is they've passed it down to their children. So it's become kind of like, what do you call that? I don't even know what it's called because we don't get those, when you leave it in a will, that's kind of how it is with us, and I know people who parents have, passed down their Section 8 or their welfare, benefits because you can do that to your children. I don't know the details, but that's only perpetuated the cycle of poverty. And I've often spoken out about it, and I get called a Republican. It's not that I'm a Republican. It's that I want to see my people progress. If you rely on the system and you perpetuate that, you're only going to perpetuate a cycle of poverty, and that's what I've seen happen. Whereas other groups, such as Mexicans who have come here and maybe have not always had it easy or been able to get these services easily and go out and have to work, have built businesses. So you see more businesses started, at least in my experiences, and I could be wrong. This is in my experience. I see more predominantly Mexicans and even Dominicans starting businesses. And I deal with a lot of business owners who are Mexican. So shout out to Mexican, the Dominicans for, the businesses that they start, and they start a lot of them. So, and as you can see at Main Street, many of the, all the businesses there are Mexican owned, a lot of businesses. And again, for Hispanic, Puerto Ricans being the largest among the Hispanic population, of Hispanic groups here, we should have something like that, right? We should have some street or two that you go down as primarily or predominantly or all Puerto Rican businesses, but we don't. And a lot of Puerto Ricans who have achieved some success have just pretty much taken off. They out. They move upstate. They buy a house, and that they're done. So the Comunidad. I want to give a little quick thing about this organization, Comunidad Mexicana de Yonkers. They sponsor many activities like the flag raising at City Hall, the Mexican Festival, and the Soul of Mexico Festival, which is held at Unto My Park. If anyone's interested in attending that, check that out. And what are some of the struggles? We faced many struggles, Puerto Ricans, when we first started to arrive, a wave of immigration in the 50s, but we still face struggles today. We faced many struggles in the 80s. Who remembers the this desegregation case in the schools, Yonkers public schools? right? And it still seems like there is some desegregation going on, not just in the schools, but in the housing in terms of low income and affordable housing. So, what are some of the struggles faced by Hispanics, Latinos here in Yonkers? Anyone? Well, one of the greatest problems is an economic problem, right? Particularly among Mexicans who have immigrated, who may have immigrated illegally and don't have documentation. So they can't, it's hard for them to find jobs, or if they do find a job, they get taken advantage of because of their immigration status, right? So you see that happening often. Uh, and again, like mentioned with the Puerto Ricans, it seems like a lot of us maybe got stuck in the system because we didn't need green cards. So when we came from Puerto Rico, we were legal citizens, so we had access to all the benefits as any other Americans would have had at that time, and we took full advantage of it, and we still do to this day. You know what I mean? So anyway, but another issue is among the Latino youth and the education graduation rate. Although it has increased here in the city, we still face a high dropout rate among Latino youth. According to some sources I was reading, particularly among Mexican families, when both parents are often forced to work, this allows for their children to be left alone because they work many times low wage jobs, low paying jobs. They can't afford childcare. So the kids are left alone. And also, they have a language barrier, right? So it's difficult many times to communicate with school officials and to address an issue that may be happening in school. And I know that my wife has faced that challenge many times, and they do often have a translator or try to bring in a translator, but there's still that communication barrier presents a huge problem when it comes to the academic experience for the student. Um, and that also is why many families stay to a certain area. So while the 80s is over now, and the desegregation case, they won. The students were spread out. Minority students were spread out throughout the city. Families, Hispanic families in particular, still chose to stay relatively close to their homes and in the communities that they lived in, which is have South and Southwest Yonkers. So in a way, it's almost like a voluntary segregation that has now occurred because they feel more comfortable in these communities and communicating with some of the staff members that work at these schools in Yonkers, in Southwest Yonkers, because oftentimes they speak Spanish, so they can communicate with the parents, and also a transportation issue. There are many Hispanics, obviously a large population, a large percentage of Hispanics live below the poverty line. Oftentimes they don't have vehicles. So in order for them to pick their children up and make it easy to transport, their child to daycare, or have someone who may be watching the child, which is usually an older sibling, right? You have big sister, big brother like me. They have to go pick up the younger siblings, so they don't want them to travel too far. So they keep them in a school that's in a low income community. Many times we know that these schools don't often get the same attention as other schools do. And that also results in a poor quality education for Hispanic students. I know I was a child that was left alone with my little sister at 9 years old. I would watch my sister. We were 9 years apart. So she basically was an infant. I was changing diapers. My mother, being a single mom, she had to work a part-time job in order to make ends meet. And that's a very real story for a lot of people, not just Hispanics, for a lot of people, but Hispanics in particular. So as I mentioned, Yonkers has dealt with past segregation in housing and education that denied equal opportunities to Blacks as well as Hispanics. Minorities were limited mostly to schools in poor physical condition. Minorities often steered into vocational programs and were steered and away from academic high school courses. And that's true. And that's true. And that's not just Yonkers. I went to school in Oklahoma, although I grew up in Yonkers. I moved out of Yonkers and finished high school in Oklahoma. And I remember they called me down to the principal's office. I thought I was in trouble for something. And it was actually to meet with a recruiter for the Army. I had no intentions of joining the Army. Thank God. And that happens oftentimes as they don't view some students the same as others and they don't see the potential in them. So they give up on them easily and try and steer them into a vocational program rather than have them continue their academic career, going into a secondary educational, institution or getting their master's and even a PhD. Right. So that's not often encouraged, and particularly in certain schools, in certain size of towns that don't get the same or have the same quality education or get the same attention and support. Right. And so what that creates is just, discourages, and it creates, a population of students that don't excel, past mediocrity. Right. They don't reach their full potential. There's a lot of students, a lot of kids, Hispanics, who have great potential. I grew up in the hood. My mother was incarcerated. I was, all that stuff. I've seen drug addiction, domestic violence. I've seen people get killed on my way to Little League game. First time on Riverdale Avenue, right by St. Peter's Church, in fact, right? But I was still able to get a master's degree, still got a business, MBA. I still started businesses because I chose not to join the Army and give up. And I think that we shouldn't force that upon anyone. But that often happens, and it's sad. Anyway, after the lawsuit, as I mentioned, in 1986, school desegregation, they stopped with this segregation, desegregated the schools, and that spread minority children throughout the school system, which I was one of those children in the 80s. I went to school 16, which was all the way on the opposite side of town, pretty much, all the way north. I was coming from south, and I remember taking the school bus. And that's when I actually started to hang out with Italian kids. Jonathan Guglielmo, Michael Maglia, if you're listening, do you remember me? You guys were awesome, great, and it was a great experience. It really was, to get outside of the hood and go to their house in the suburbs, or I don't know, I guess all the Yonkers are suburbs, right? But, see homes and stuff and see a mom and dad together. That was a big, game changer for me. That was. So imagine the lost opportunities that you have when you segregate people and the experiences that you keep them from having. And that was a very instrumental in who I am today. I get along with anybody, all races, all colors, doesn't matter, old, young. I talk to everybody. My wife says I talk too much. That's why I have a podcast, right? But I don't fear talking to white people. And that's a real fear. I know it sounds silly, but that is a real fear. That is a real fear among some Hispanics, talking to white people, engaging white people, especially of authority. That hinders growth and progress. And that's very real. It's very real. And that's something I try to work with people, especially through my nonprofit and any young people I used to work with and still do, and teaching them how to effectively communicate in an interview and not answer a question with one word, right? Elaborate. What does elaborate even mean? And not to be, sound like that, but this is very real, things that I've encountered. And this is why I'm talking about it. So politics, what are the politicians doing about it? Do they care? I don't know. Some might say they don't. Some say they do. Yonkers Latinos have fought for political representation on the city council for a long time now. Well, in 1994, Fernando Fuentes, anybody remember him? Became the first Latino appointed to the body and the first Latino elected official here in the city of Yonkers. We are still waiting on a Latino mayor. I bet you might see one soon. Anyone disagree? I think so. I think both parties are looking for a Latino. We're the flavor of the year. Hispanic Democrats of Westchester, and I want to just talk about this organization, is a political organization that has been here in Yonkers over 40 years. They serve to empower the Hispanic community of Westchester by educating electorates, developing leadership skills, conducting voter registration, cultivating and supporting qualified Hispanic candidates, and electing Hispanics and other candidates who are supportive of the issues concerning the Hispanic community. Is that a fact? Know this. The thing with me is this. This is Basement Politics Unfiltered, correct? This is why I have no advertisements. I don't want to be bound by anyone in what I say. I want my message to be clear, and I want it to be honest, and I want it to be in full. We have these organizations that represent Latinos. They call themselves Hispanics, Democrats of Westchester. We have the Hispanic Business Council or Hispanic Commerce or Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. And again, no disrespect to no one. However, what are we doing for the Hispanic community? In my next part, I will talk about some influential members of the Hispanic community who have been around for a long time, involved in both politics and community activities. However, it has benefited very few. If you are serving the Hispanic community, why is the Hispanic community not being served? It seems like everyone has their own agenda. Everyone says, I have my own. I have an agenda. Yes, to bring you this information, to help guide you, to help see, or have you see some things that maybe not being seen and need to be. Well, I looked at the Hispanic Democrats of Westchester, and I said, well, who do they contribute to? What do they do? Who are they pushing? They cultivate and support candidates who are supposed to be supporting and champion for issues that benefit or that concern the Hispanic community. So I said, let me look at who they've been contributing to. And I just want to share that quickly. I just want to try to make sense of this. I won't click OK because it might take the page off. Anyway, so Hispanic Democrats of Westchester contributed a big chunk, $18,000 to Hispanic Democrats of Westchester. They primarily donated to the Westchester County Democratic Committee. That's all I pretty much saw when I scrolled through it. I mean, there are some others, and that's great. They are Democrats, right? However, if you're donating to just one organization, primarily like the Democratic Committee, that consists of a bunch of people, not just Hispanic. How do we know that the money is being allocated appropriately and it's being used to support Hispanic causes? How do we know? Hispanic Democrats of Westchester. I want to play a little video here. This is from the Yonkers Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, 10th anniversary. A woman by the name of Grace Barani. She is the president. And this is from the, really quick, this is from the Yonkers Voice. Shout out to the Yonkers Voice and Rue Rose, giving him credit. This is Robbie Man, I believe he goes by Robbie Man.
You've been a part of this chamber, I want to say, from the very get-go. Is that right?
No, actually, I've been involved maybe going on 6 years now, but actually the founder of the chamber is Carmen Gomez Goldberg.
And she's here actually tonight, right?
Yes, she is here, and she actually got me involved in the chamber with Eda Ponte, our chairman.
It's a very exciting night. You have a lot of guests. We saw the commissioner, we saw the county executive. What are the big names you expect to see tonight?
Okay, so yes, Rob Astorino is here. Mayor Mike Spanner will be here. Yes, we have the commissioners, police commissioners. We have everybody, to tell you the truth, because it's not just about Hispanic businesses or just businesses. It's about the community. So many of the people just come and, celebrate with us, share time with us, give us ideas about business, give us ideas about the community.
What's special about the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce? Tell me one special moment
Yeah.
that sits right here with you.
Just the fact that I, as president, am able to help some of our members when they tell me, okay, Grace, I'm having a problem. I helped one person in particular.
Listen
We were
close.
trying to open up their business, and I actually held their hand and went through the process. We found them a property because, I'm a real estate broker. We found them a property. Because we're involved in the community, we were able to get their store up and running, and little things that other people wouldn't do, we're able to do for them. We connect any business, any association or organization that can help our Hispanic or regular business owners.
So she said there that one of the things they do is they help, and she gave an example of how they help small businesses, particularly those owned by Latinos and Hispanic. I'm a Latino and Hispanic business owner who has been struggling, but forget me. I don't want to talk about me anymore. Let's talk about the other Hispanic small business owner who recently purchased a business from a well-known family here in Yonkers. As soon as he tried to open his business up, the building department hit him with a bunch of violations and issues. They want him to replace the roof, replace all the flooring, and add a ramp in the front. However, this business had been there forever, owned by a famous family with no problems. This is a Mexican gentleman and business owner. He has been having problems and has been struggling. Similar situation to mine. And I'm sure there are others. However, as she said, she has helped guide people through the process, helped them deal with issues with the building department, and get them open. She even helped them locate a property for their business because she's a realtor. How convenient. Perfect. Perfect. Worked out well. Didn't she run for office? She probably did. She probably did. But I'll double check. The point is this. You say that you are for the Hispanic community, Hispanic business owners. However, there are Hispanic business owners out there struggling and having issues. Do we not get that same support if we don't utilize your for-profit businesses or services? I don't need a property. I don't need anything other than help with the building department. Can you do that? This gentleman also needs help. Or does he have to hire a certain contractor and a certain architect? Question mark. Right? So are you there to truly help, or are you there to benefit in some way, utilizing your Hispanic heritage or ethnicity? Just asking. Just asking. I like how they stress that we're not just here for the Hispanic, but all people, all businesses. Then why call yourself Hispanic Chamber of Commerce? They already have a Chamber of Commerce. We needed a Hispanic Chamber of Commerce to specifically focus on Hispanic businesses or owned businesses. It seems like you're trying to let people know, hey, not just Hispanics, anyone can come. We're here to help you. I want to share another video.
I'm not sure, but I know that it's political season.
This is Edward
Everyone's
Aponte.
always welcome. We always try to be for the private sector and for the business community. From a political standpoint, we're always careful with that, but we open our arms to everyone and anyone. We're expecting our county executive, Rob Astorino, to be here shortly. and our mayor, Mike Spano, that supports the Yonkers Hispanic Chamber.
A lot of support, it sounds like. I want to thank you for joining the Yonkers Voice. We're going to be jumping around. We're going to talk to the president. We're going to talk to a couple of people, and I'm going to be following you today.
Thank you very much, and thank you for being.
There are events that you've done or something that's served a good cause.
Well, there's many.
A proud moment.
There's many, but one of the that comes to the forefront is one of our honorees tonight, Mr. Alfonso Alvarez. He's been having challenges and getting and expanding his business, so we've been able to help him through the city, through the buildings department. As a loan officer, I'm able to secure financing with different institutions that are out of the box conventionally. So we were able to help him secure the financing. So we were able to help him from a city standpoint, from a buildings department standpoint, from the private sector, to make sure that an individual like him that's been in the community for 30, 35 years can have an opportunity to be part of the renaissance that's happening here in the city of Yonkers.
Sounds very exciting.
Well, I'm trying to be a part of the renaissance. And so are many other business owners or individuals of Hispanic descent who are having trouble. But forget about us business owners. What about housing? Housing is a huge need for the Hispanic community. I want to quickly share some stats before I get out of here, because I think this is important. First, I want to show you the Hispanic population. Hopefully you can see that, but I'll read it off if you can't. By percentage. The highest, Nodine Hill has the highest number of Hispanics at 56.7%. The Getty Square area, 52%. Ludlow, 50%. Park Hill, 46.8%. This says Yonkers Ave area, 33%. Neperhan area, 30%. Beach Hill, 2%. Homefield, 12%. Northeast, 12%. I'm part of that 12%. Colonial Heights, 16%. So these are the more affluent areas, the ones I was just reading off. Beach Hill being one of the major affluent areas. Colonial Heights is over where the mayor and the elites stay, a lot of them. Lincoln Park, 22%. But you see the majority are in the Nodine Hill, Getty Square, Ludlow, Park Hill, Yonkers Ave area. Majority of Hispanics, majority of area, we reside. So I want to share now, knowing that, some educational statistics really quick, and employment, and then I'll let you go. This is employed working age men. So we have the highest number in the Dunwoody area, Crestwood, Beach Hill, Lincoln Park, Westchester Hills, but you go all the way down, we're down to the bottom. You have Nodine Hill, Getty Square. Obviously, you're going to find a lot of your unemployed individuals in these areas, not just Hispanic, but of all races. But Hispanics predominantly we're found predominantly in that section, right? A lot of us, I grew up in Southwest Yonkers on Buena Vista Avenue and Riverdale. So you're going to see a lot more poverty. You're going to see a lot of the unemployment rates higher there. You're going to see the income levels lower there. You're going to see the education rate, graduation rate lower there in these areas. And I wanted to show you where majority of the Hispanics in Yonkers live, so I can show you these statistics so you can see that it's affecting primarily Hispanics. We have a huge issue here. And let me show you the education. Is this it? No, it's population. Sorry. And it's important because if we don't increase the education, the graduation rate among Hispanics is only going to perpetuate the poverty cycle. And that's what my nonprofit seeks to do, which is why I am, putting on financial workshops for free for all individuals. Household income by neighborhood. Beach Hill being the number one, $106,000 medium household income. Let's go down to the bottom. Getty Square is the at the very bottom. 30,000 medium household income. Nodine Hill is next. That is District 2, which is Councilwoman Pineda, Corazon Pineda, a Dominican, a Latina. Seem to focus a lot on Ludlow, however, for some reason. Nodine Hill gets neglected a bit, but Ludlow isn't doing too good as well. 52,000 medium income. And that's not a lot of money these days. It's not 100,000 is not a lot of money these days. In fact, many of the affordable housing here, you can make up to 100,000 and still qualify for an affordable housing a unit. It's not a lot. Six-figure incomes. You see the disparities here between the communities. Getty Square, Nodine Hill, Park Hill, Ludlow, there at the bottom. Income inequality. Westchester County at the top there. That's the entire county. And you see the greatest income inequality in the Getty Square area. And that's probably now because you see a lot of the expensive market rate apartments. So I'll bring you more information, more statistics, but I will also be talking about the organizations here in the city of Yonkers. Does anyone remember the Yonkers Day Parade back in the day when we had the 3-day festival? That was the good old days. Who were the leaders of that Yonkers Puerto Rican Day Parade committee? And something interesting also that ties into my Privileges, Perks, and Benefits series with Liam McLaughlin and Kimball Wilson. Back when Liam McLaughlin was the president and CEO of the Battery Park Authority, where he was forced to resign, he actually contributed money to the Yonkers Parade, or the Yonkers Puerto Rican Day Parade Committee. That was specifically noted in the investigation by the Attorney General at the time, because it was an organization and one of many that he donated money, Battery Park money, to that had nothing to do with Battery Park Authority, Battery Park, or Manhattan at all. But I noted the Yonkers Puerto Rican Day Parade because I'm talking about Yonkers. Why did he donate money back then to the Yonkers Puerto Rican Day Parade, and how much? And where did that money go? Because from what I hear, at one point, the Yonkers Puerto Rican Day Committee was in debt to the city for tens of thousands of dollars. Money that went missing and they could not pay back. However, that debt was satisfied. It was resolved. How did that happen? Where did the money go? And who was in charge at the time? And who's in charge now? I'm Freddie Vasquez. This is Basement Politics. I'm talking about Latinos de Yonkers. Join me tomorrow at 6 p.m. for an interview of a lifetime, for me anyway. Guess who's coming on? Well, you're going to have to watch tomorrow at 6 p.m. live. Tune in. You're going to like this one. I'm moving up, folks. I'm moving on up. Also, tomorrow, look out for me. I'll be on in the morning. Surprise. So watch out. Look out. Check out Facebook. Have a good night, everyone. Thanks for joining.
Game over.